Welcome to Reset the Algorithm. As promised, we are going deep into the bowels of culture, politics, and business. But this week, we're going to really focus on the flat tire of emotion that I'm feeling, my team is feeling, and it feels like a general state of, well, I'll just say I feel demoralized. I think that's where if I was to think of a word that embodies where I stand today, and then if I look around at everyone that I care about and I work with and I talk to and my spouse and my friends, I think there's a sense of there's a depression. It's almost like a malaise of depression, like marinate, like malaise right over everyone. And it feels like no one's really present. It feels like everyone's checked out. It feels like everyone's on the verge of like kind of abandoning and like kind of quitting each other and quitting life because we can't get to any of the leaders who have made these decisions that have put us in this place. It feels like we are taking it out on each other. And so I would say on a scale of 1 to 10, I feel like we're like at a 10 plus in terms of like funk and depression. And I would say that in general, everyone feels very unwell. And so congratulations to everyone who does feel well. You are doing something right. I don't know if that's like you're not on social or you're eating well or sleeping well, but I think that if you do feel well right now, it means that you're probably going way, 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 way out of your way to manage your mental health. And so this might be like a mental health episode. So welcome to Reset the Algorithm, our second anonymous episode. So I just want to remind everyone that Reset the Algorithm is really a passion project of myself and the team. And it's a really small team. It's like 4 of us. We read every comment, every DM. We lament and just like we take so seriously every comment, every like, every unfollow, every criticism, every positive note that we get. Because I feel like we're taking this super seriously and we take you very seriously. And so this episode, we asked you to send us anonymous comments, questions, and thoughts. And we really appreciate all of the submissions. There was a ton of submissions from a lot of different ranges of ideas and feelings. So I think we're really committed to going on this learning safari with you in a very transparent way. And even on the weeks where it feels like it kind of sucks and we're not sure why we're doing this, we're going to pull you into like where we're at. And if I was to be transparent with you, I feel like this week has been like one of the hardest weeks to work on this project. It's been like, it's actually, I don't want to say it feels like work, but it feels like it's been like grief and hardship to put this together. And it's not because we don't love doing it, but because, like I said, because no one can get to the people that they, are actually in charge and making decisions, people are just taking blows at anyone they can reach. And we're putting ourselves out there. Again, like the people behind this are, in my mind, some of the most devoted and empathetic people. So like when we read this stuff, like, man, it really rocks us to our core or it lights us up. And so thanks for coming with us on this journey on this week where I'll just be real, like, I think it really sucked this week. Okay, let's go. I'm going to read one of our anonymous submissions. Came in on May 10th. So here it is. I am a Jew. When 10/7 happened, I really just wanted revenge. It was such a horrific massacre, and it was sickening to see people only yelling about the Palestinian civilians being killed, not a word about the horrific massacre. As the war went on, I realized that it was accomplishing nothing, and human beings are being used as collateral damage, and that's horrific. Now, I'm just trying to understand how extremism in all religions, Christianity, Islamicism, and Judaism, is evil here. Really just trying to understand the truth in caps when there's so much yelling. This comment, well, first of all, congratulations to whoever wrote this because you clearly are high in EQ and IQ, and you're able to recognize that you started in a place that is really your lowest. It's like your lowest self, which is revenge is actually one of the most distasteful things I find in myself and in others. I think it's so petty. It's so uninteresting. Whenever I have ever acted out of revenge, it's like one of those things where like, you're like, it's like drinking sugar and eating deep fried, like there's nothing, it's actually erosive to yourself and to others. And so congrats to you for realizing that revenge is actually incredibly putrid and gross, especially when what we're talking about is not deep fried foods and sugar, but like actually killing and maiming and displacing and starving and like murdering, massacring people, human beings, especially when they're like your neighbors. Like that's kind of insane to do that and think that something good will come out of that. I'm happy to hear you say that you are now focusing in on Christian Islamicism and Judaism, which I call messianic extremism. My personal belief on this, and this is where I land today, which is we are at a crossroads of extremist groups. They are the same in nature. They are the same in intent. They are the same in energy. They are war energy. When I say war energy, that is what I'm talking about. I am talking about Christian extremism. I'm talking about messianic extremism. I am talking about Islamic extremism. The same energy that killed Masa Amini is the same energy that had Christians in this country lynch Black people with a Bible on their hand, is the same energy that allows messianic extremists to go into the West Bank, into Gaza, and to literally massacre and kill Palestinian people and Arabs. So these three extremisms to me are one and the same. And I think we have to start to shift away from Israel-Palestine. And I think the sooner we get focused on religious nationalism and extremism, because they are the same exact thing, the sooner we can actually begin to get well. So thank you for that comment and question and just sharing that. So May 9th, why do you think you're allowed to speak on behalf of Palestinians and Israelis when you have never been there? Why can't you just shut the fuck up and stick to Iran? So I get this is like a very common DM or message that I get. It amazes me when people do it because they're doing it from like an account that's like their first name, last name, and like they're a real person, which is nuts because I would never, ever in a zillion years talk to someone like that. So A, the privilege must be nice. B, why do I talk about Israel Palestine? Well, anyone who knows me knows that I've avoided to talk about it like the entirety of my entire life. In fact, it's like one of the biggest jokes between my wife and I because we've been married for a decade and she has been to Palestine and she is a scholar and an academic and she knows a lot about this topic. And it's the one topic that we really have never discussed in our marriage because it's something that I did not want to be involved in, frankly. The reason I talk about it is that when the Islamic Republic of Iran, which is occupying my actual family, not like my distant family, not like my family, kind of my family, like my aunts, my uncles, my cousins, when they're occupying the money and governance of my people, because I'm an indigenous Iranian, I don't belong here in the United States of America. I actually should be living where I want to live, which is with my family, and I could still work and enjoy an American lifestyle, but like I'm an Iranian. And when the people who occupy me are now occupying Palestine and are supporting Hamas with Iranian money, that matters to me. As a US taxpayer that pays lots of money in taxes, when my money is being misused as opposed to going to education and police reform and infrastructure and healthcare and services that actually benefit American citizens, and my tax dollars are being shipped out to support a geopolitical war that, as far as I'm concerned, is frankly in the interest of business and not humanity. It's my business. And also, I have a lot of people in my life who are both Muslim and Jewish. My wife is a scholar and academic. She teaches at UCLA, and this has impacted our lives. So that's why I talk about it. I talk about it because Iranian girls were killed on the 7th. I talk about it because I know 12 of my fellows from the Aspen Institute have been killed and displaced in Gaza. So this has impacted everything about Iran, everything about America, everything about the things that I care about. But you're also rude. You could have just said that in a way that was polite. You could have just said, hey, respectfully, I want to know why you feel like you can talk about this. I want to understand. But instead you came with what I call war energy. This is like, that's you, war energy. Because when you come at someone with you're not even listening. You're not even interested in the answer. You're more energy. So it's people like you that actually got us here to begin with. Rude. Okay. May 10th. Another really good anonymous submission. Hi, I'm really struggling to be online right now. My feed has always been and probably will always be about politics and post about political issues. Do you have any tips on how to not get overwhelmed and burnt out, for lack of a better word, from the internet activism? Many thanks. Great question. Selfishly, I would ask you to delete Instagram or social. I would encourage you to put a time limit on it so that you get sort of like a 1 hour allocation to social. I think that social media is super unhealthy. What I would encourage you to do is take your activism offline. So look at community meetings that you can attend that are about conflict resolution. Attend a march that's about conflict resolution. Organize your own gathering, like grab 3 or 4 of your friends and get everyone out for a walk or a hike or a brunch or something fun, because what this conflict has done a good job of is stealing our joy. And it's done a good job of making sure that we all feel disempowered, making us feel alone, done a good job of making us feel like we hate each other. And so I think it's really, really important. And I've done a lot of this myself. I've gone to meet hostage families, got into synagogues, met with Palestinians, met with Muslims. I've had uncomfortable, courageous conversations with lots of practicing Muslims, my own family. And I think that like being able to eat together, walk together, breathe together, cry together is a really healing thing. And I think we need to do that. And I think had we been doing that, you wouldn't see this level of violence happening at the college campuses. Okay, another good one from May 10th. As a liberal Israeli who took part in everything I could to change the awful government, we got caught under here. I'm exhausted by trying to show everyone the other side, our side, the liberal Israeli side. We are getting hate from other Israelis. We are getting hate from liberals worldwide. I just don't have the power to fight anymore for anything. Nobody wants to look beyond their own thoughts. So people ask me all the time why I am an advocate for Israeli people and Jewish people. This comment, I think, speaks to why. I talk to a ton of Israelis, both Jewish and not, in Israel, who literally tell me the same thing over and over again. What I feel sad about is that the moderate, progressive, liberal voices inside Israel that want to course correct the history of this government and this entity and this strategy that's not been successful in the Middle East, those people have been snuffed out by exactly as they described. They've been snuffed out by all the extremist voices, both pro-Israeli, pro-Palestinian, like all of them. Every single extremist voice on the planet has basically snuffed out this particular group. And it's this particular group that I'm extremely, extremely hopeful about. Groups like Standing Together, who actually are not afraid to acknowledge the disparities and injustices of Israel. And they're also in the streets fighting for it, taking office within city council, electing other candidates. But I don't know what to tell you. Like, you're in a crappy situation because your own people are fighting against you. I think, what's my advice? You need to get louder. You need to inspire people within your own group to actually get a lot louder, get a lot clear, get a lot more crisp. And I would encourage you, like as an American, calling out the police 10 years ago was not an easy thing to do. Calling out as an Iranian, I can tell you the first time we called out this, when we said the words of the Islamic Republic, that felt terrifying. Like you were almost, throwing your own nation and country and people under the bus. But you can't really claim to be a democracy or a progressive country if you can't hold your people and your systems accountable. And so what I hear from you is, you're a leader, you are at the fringe, you are alone, and you need to do a good job of finding other people to help you get stronger, because there's so many people on every side that simply don't want your voice to exist, but your voice has to exist because your country has gone down the road of becoming an extremist organization. Like, you are using military might to extinguish an ideology, which in the history of ideologies, we have never seen anyone be able to like bomb and destroy an ideology. We've just never seen that. So, yeah, I would be freaked out if I were you too. And I'm sorry that you're dealing with it. And it's a lot of the reason of why I have such a deep level of empathy for the folks who are actually in Israel, is so many of you are this voice. You're not down with this government. And on a final note, you said, I just feel like I don't have the power anymore to fight for anything. Nobody wants to look beyond their own thoughts. This is what the internet wants you to believe. The internet wants you to believe you're alone, but you're not alone, because there is a coalition of people out there looking for you. People who are progressive, people who care about democracy, people who care about human rights. And I have found great solace in my coalition of the founders of, whether it be BLM or the Women's March or various different politicians, thought leaders, activists, Sally and Alone Lee and Rola from Standing Together, even meeting Omar from BDS, meeting people and coming together. And it doesn't mean that everyone that you talk to is Bible, right? Like, it doesn't mean that their perspective is the answer. What is the thing to do right now is to be attracted to people who are willing to call out the problem. I'm extremely attracted to people right now that are willing to raise their hands and talk about a problem, whether that's in Yemen or Nigeria or in Missouri or in Pennsylvania or Washington, D.C. It doesn't Flint, Michigan. I could go on and on. But if you are courageous enough to raise your hand and say, I'm a citizen of a place and I see a problem within my government and my systems, and I want to work with other people to impact and change those policies, then we have to find each other. And so I think that's what this show is about. This show has been about, how do we all find each other? Because as I've said a million zillion times, our leaders suck. Every single one of them suck. We don't have any good leaders. We need new leaders, and we need to create a space for new leaders to come forward. And so I'm sorry you feel alone. I'm sorry that you're being snuffed by your own crew. I'm sorry that liberals around the world are turning their backs on you for not being liberal enough. I think your situation is actually terrible. And I feel for you. And when people are like, why are you so, you're pro-Israeli. And I'm like, I'm pro the voices inside Israel that want to push forward for a resolution peacefully and want to value democracy as the gold standard of how things should be. But when they think about democracy, they think about it through the lens of humanity, not militaries. And so thanks for your thought. Okay, next thought. I loved your episode with Omar Barghouti, and seeing everyone's comments and reactions on your Insta was a bummer. So many people were upset. The overall extreme stance on both sides of this conflict are tiring. I appreciate what you're doing and learning more from your account. It was a real bummer for us too. Omar's episode was incredible to be able to do it, because he is, no one else has built something like BDS. And it's super interesting to think about through the lens of, Iranians worldwide have been trying to figure out how to get companies to boycott and divest from the Islamic Republic, and have not been able to figure out how to do that. There's 600 companies in business with the Islamic Republic today throughout Germany and Europe and China. But this episode needed to happen, and you needed to hear this episode. And I'm sorry to everyone who was offended by it. The fact that you are offended by it concerns me. And I'll tell you a couple of reasons why. I'm not going to claim that this episode was easy. It was not easy. I personally think that I would handle things probably differently, but I think I'm like, I don't know. Let's just punt on this for a second of what I would do. Omar is Palestinian. His lineage is Palestinian. It's not right for me to say what he should or shouldn't do. He wants to create an organization that's around divesting and boycotting organizations that work with Israel. Okay. He chooses to do it through nonviolent means. He chooses to make it clear that no physical harm or violence should ever happen to civilians. And more importantly, the reason why I was interested in talking to him is he was very clear. Hamas does not represent the Palestinian people. So this pro-Israeli movement has been so critical of anyone who's pro-Palestinian. I haven't met a single pro-Palestinian activist that the pro-Israeli audiences or crews will say okay, well, that person is protesting Palestine correctly. We live in America. People should be protesting for Palestine. There's no reason why they should not be protesting for Palestine. They don't have a state. They don't have any laws that protect them. They need to be protected. It's gross that it's gone on this long, and they deserve to be able to say that. I mean, if they're being subjected to terrible conditions, they should be able to say that. We found an activist that talks about nonviolence, that talks about activism through divestments, and doesn't like or support Hamas, and doesn't support what happened on the 7th as an act of resistance. I'm not sure what else you could possibly ask for. I think that for everyone who was offended by him, how can I say this? It's weird. It's like actually weird, because even though I don't agree with his strategy, I don't feel like I have the want or desire to basically say what you guys said. It floored me. Do I like JVP? No. Do I agree with everything he said? No. Do I wish he had talked about the Islamic Republic? Yes. Do I wish he would acknowledge that there was multiple bad actors? Yes. Do I think he's incredibly focused and disciplined and unflappable? Yes. And if I was Palestinian, I wouldn't say I would want him to be my only leader, but I wouldn't be pissed that he was one of my leaders, you know? So if I were you guys, I would make him your friend, and I would talk to him, and I would learn him and figure out how you can make something happen, because he's just trying to make something happen for his people, which for a bunch of people that care so much for their people, like, it's weird that you think that other people shouldn't care for their people. Like, of course they're going to care for their people. They're being killed on a live stream. Like, that's what any normal human being on the planet should do. Like, if you're Palestinian and you don't care about what's going on, like, that would be freaking weird. He's handling it better than I would. If I was Palestinian, I don't think I would have that level of control and temperament. I think I would be out of my mind with anger and rage, just because I know for a fact all of those people buried under rubble had nothing to do with 10/7, because those people didn't even vote for Hamas. They're not even old enough to vote for Hamas. I think Omar was very smart. I would be thrilled to talk to him again, because looking up the history of his family, reading about his brother, this is a very strategic person. While I don't agree with him on everything, doesn't mean I can't learn from him. Have my opinions shifted during the conflict? Clearly. I like that this question was about opinions and beliefs and not feelings, because there's been a lot to digest from a feelings perspective. So my feelings have been like a tornado, like tsunami of feelings. But my opinions and beliefs, I think, are pretty much where I was on the 7th, but I'm now armed with a whole new set of facts. And so those facts have been the most difficult piece to balance. So I'll run you through a list of facts that I now contend with throughout the day that I didn't know about. Just being transparent, vulnerable here, I avoided the Israel-Palestine issue for the entirety of my life, which the irony of this is that my wife is a scholar and academic and filmmaker, and has a PhD in the history of consciousness, and Angela Davis was her supervisor in her PhD program. So she has been to the West Bank, she has been to Gaza, and has a lot to say on the topic. But it's one of those things in our marriage we've never really talked about, because I just never wanted to talk about it. So here's what I've learned. I've learned that Hamas does not represent the Palestinian people. I've learned that Palestinian people need a right to their own self-determination. They deserve reparations. They deserve to be known for who they are. They are indigenous to Palestine, and they are definitively their own people. Blanket calling them Arabs is racist, and is really a strategy to dehumanize them. What I've also learned is that there's an incredible group of people in Israel that are passionate and smart and want a democracy and are fighting for democratic values and want coexistence and want justice for Palestinians, and are not happy about the state of Israeli politics and policies, and believe in Israel's right to exist, but also believe that that right for Israeli and Jewish life to exist in the Middle East does not have to come at the cost of humanity, respect, and liberation of Palestinian people. I've really enjoyed getting to know a lot of the folks in Israel, everyone from hostage families to members of like various different political groups. So I've learned that there's a huge variation within, Israeli social structure and belief and the Jewish diaspora, two very different things. I've learned that there's a huge difference between pro-Palestinian activists who've been in this work for decades and decades and decades, and people who joined this cause after the 7th. I've learned a lot more about the Islamic Republic. I've learned about America's vested interest in extremism. I've learned a lot about Christian Zionism. I was not aware of the 30 million Christian Zionists in this country who are part of the far right GOP, and many of them are involved in AIPAC. Many of them are involved in Trump's party, the MAGA party, and the right wing conservatives and GOP and Christian nationalists and Christian Zionism and Israeli messianic extremism and Jewish supremacy are kind of like all this thing that's tied together. And that was fucking news to me. And I did not know about all of those things. I did not know what Chris Rufo and Bill Ackman and Ed Blum and like all the ways in which there's been a fight for the Christian right, the extremist right, the GOP right, the white nationalist right. And oddly, it's like kind of crazy to even say this, but oddly how they are tied to messianic right, AIPAC right, like that hot mess of shit was not something I knew about that now I do. Now I know how deep and involved NIAC, Islamic Republic proxies, various other, Islamic government proxies are involved in academia, politics. I don't think I realized how much America doesn't care about Iranians. Also, I had no clue that we were so fine to do business with dictators as a democracy as long as that dictatorship was a financial business benefit to us. I don't think I realized that we were willing to sell out 89 million Iranians in trade for, a few million barrels of oil a day. What else did I not know? I didn't realize how easy it is to ship military equipment worldwide, and that like you could just do that without the consent of American taxpayers and the public. What a big business the Red Sea is. What a big business the Red Sea is. I don't think I knew about that. I didn't know the Palestinian people were not extremely religious, that it's more of a political affiliation than it is about an ideology of a religion. It's more of an ideology of a political affinity and a political aspiration. So distinctly different than the Islamic Republic. So while the Islamic Republic is actually a Islamic, ideology state that is focused on Mahdiism and imams and like the actual end of the Zionist state, the Palestinian proxy Hamas is more about a political militia, which is different than the religious extremism, which I probably to you, you're going to say, who cares? They're all the same thing. But like Iranians care and Muslims care, because to conflate the ideology of a political party with the ideology of a religious extremist group, even though they're like kind of the same thing, they're kind of like a different operating system. And so just learning about the different operating systems of Hezbollah versus the Houthi versus the Islamic Republic versus the Muslim Brotherhood versus the Taliban versus ISIS, it's been super interesting. I'm not religious, so whatever. Got a whopper at the end for the Anon episode of Reset the Algorithm. So I'm going to read this very lengthy comment. I'm an Iranian, and I am truly disgusted by the endless Iranians who are choosing to stay silent around the ethnic cleansing taking place in Palestine. They may address other crises, they may talk about other countries' struggles, but maybe acknowledging that the Israeli government is on the wrong side of history is a big no-no for them, as though it's taboo. There are too many Iranians who act like they are on a high and mighty. There are too many Iranians who act as if they are high and mighty and deserve the world's attention. They think they are superior, truly superior, and they think they are human rights advocates. There are too many Iranians who act as though they are high and mighty and deserve the world's attention. They think they are a superior race, truly superior, and they think they are human rights advocates solely due to the rise of the women life freedom revolution. But over the last 2 years, we see that it's selective advocacy, selective activism, i.e., only directed towards select groups, their own people in this case, and it's not a human rights advocacy. They seem to believe some twisted, misconstrued version of woman life freedom, Xinjiang Azadi, and they think this movement asks that we solely highlight and center the people of Iran. They act as though Iranian people's oppression should be seen as most important. Finally, Zionism and women life freedom advocacy do not and should not overlap. This is not a Venn diagram. They are entirely separate, polar opposite worldviews, and anyone who can proudly claim to carry both in their heart is deeply confused and needs to get out of the way of those who are fighting to end fascist dictatorships. This is a stain on the women life freedom revolution. So, this is a really great question, and I'm excited to answer it. There's a lot to unpack. This situation is hard because Iranians and Palestinians have a complicated history, whether it's because Yasser Arafat was involved in the 1979 revolution, which Iranians hold Yasser Arafat partially responsible for helping bring in Khomeiniism in the Islamic Republic, whether it's because Palestinians partnered with Saddam Hussein in providing soldiers against Iran in the war, in the 1980 war, where 200,000 children were martyred and 2 million Iranians died. And most of our fathers, uncles, and cousins were pulled into the draft and had to serve, right? So Iranians and Palestinians, even though we're energetically really connected and actually very similar to each other, like there's a lot of tension there, and it's not because the public or the culture has tension, but because we've both been pawns and used by bad actors. And so that's a little bit of the history. Why is this hard? This is hard because Iranians want to free Iran, and we do not like any of the proxies because those proxies are all using our money and our resources to fund terrorism and wars that the Iranian people do not believe brings any justice to them and or to anyone worldwide. So part of the reason why this is really hard is that there are people, not everybody, but there's some people that claim the seventh as resistance and Hamas as freedom fighters, and Iranians innately hate the Islamic Republic, Hamas, the Houthi, and Hezbollah. Like, we hate them because we see them as threats to our freedom, and we see them as stealers of joy and liberation, not just to their own people, but everyone worldwide. So that's one reason why this is really hard. Why is it that we're unable to speak truth to power about Israel? Frankly, I think everyone's afraid to speak truth to power on the Israel issue. I think no one can honestly talk about Israel without being called, that you're anti-Semitic, or you're against democracy, or you're a traitor, or you're a Hamas supporter, or you love the Islamic Republic, or you would be raped and killed and thrown over a building if you lived in Gaza, or you are like, you should be deported. Like, if you even remotely assert that, like, you think Israel is unethical, not a democracy, operating with no checks and balances, has systematically dehumanized Palestinians, has systematically used the American public's money to fund military operations that don't benefit the region or anyone. They are ethnically cleansing. Like, if you ever bring that energy, if you use the words genocide, if you use the word, even when you say Palestine, people will be like, where is Palestine? Where is that? Palestine doesn't exist. Israel exists. Palestine doesn't exist. Like, it's like there's so many ways in which you can like step into that bomb, that button pile of crap, that because of the history of Jewish people and how they have been ethnically cleansed and how there was a genocide, and because of the actual real trauma and violence that Jewish people have gone through for a millennia, to say anything negative about Israel has now immediately become, you are anti-Semitic and you do not support Jewish people. And that makes this really tough. So I think that's why not just Iranians, but people in general have a really hard time. And of course, it's incredibly inspiring to have a democratic state in the middle of the Middle East, because the aspirations of Iran is to be a democracy. So we all want to believe that Israel is a democracy, because we believe that shine, that energy, that culture of a democracy in the Middle East will become contagious and will spread to Syria and to Iraq and to Iran, and it will become status quo. And so, of course, myself included, I love talking about the potential and the idea of Israel being a democracy. What has been super duper difficult is that Israel is not a very good democracy, and it's really failing at dealing with this issue with Palestinian people, both in and out of Israel, both people inside Israel and people in Gaza and in the West Bank. So that's why I think it's really tough. You're saying that there's selective advocacy. I would have to agree with that. I think there has been selective advocacy. I don't think people know how to stand for Jewish people, support people in Israel, and also hold the Israeli government and the American government accountable for the human rights impact on Palestinian people. I don't think anyone has actually figured out how to do that, to say, I support Israeli people and I support Jewish people, but I do not support military actions, operations, and occupations of the Palestinian people. And so it's almost like impossible to do it. So I think people just don't even try because nobody wants to be written off as, being an anti Semitic person. What has also been super difficult in thinking about Iranian people in and out of the diaspora, but specifically in the diaspora, is that Iranian Jews are extremely triggered and not in the best of places in this moment, because you're talking about a group that left their country, most of them overnight, most of them in a actual panic and state of terror, loving their country, living for thousands of years in Iran happily, as a part of society, equally and with a lot of affection and admiration, but that Iranians who left Iran to now come to America, and now they're in America and they're watching, in their eyes, in their opinion, young students on the left advocate for, in their minds, again, I'm telling you what they see. They see people who support Hamas and the end of Israel. So in their minds, they're feeling like, not one, but two of their homes have been taken by extremists and leftists, which makes sense that that's their trauma. What's been brutal to see at the UCLA campus is Iranian Jews showing up in the middle of the night with 4x4s and mace and bear spray, physically assaulting people in encampments, including Jews in those encampments, and like physically assaulting people. And it has been wildly upsetting and embarrassing to see them so proudly sort of claiming this act of resistance as if it was somehow patriotic to both Iran or America, and that it was somehow like a liberating thing to do. It's been, I think that's like been one of the most embarrassing things that have come out of the 7th, is like watching our own people devolve and digress into like our worst selves, because that's just like not who we are. Finally, Zionism and women life freedom advocacy should not and do not overlap. So the word Zionism has now become like a super loaded, politically charged thing for a lot of people. It means a lot of different things. I mean, everything from right to exist to right to defend, right to coexist to, Palestine doesn't exist. It means a lot of different things. I think that in order for us to get to a better place, we need to like de-radicalize from these words and allow for them to like actually reshape and reset for what the intent of those words I think were meant to be. The way I understand it is that Zionism means that Jews have a right to self-determination and that they have a place that is safe for them, right? And I think when you think about, I mean, for God's sake, if you think about the Holocaust alone, much less the fact that before that there was a lot of, continued violence against them, it would make sense for people to want that. I do continue to say that it sounds to me like America, which is a plural democratic country, continues to be a more safe place for Jewish people than even in Israel, like just where we don't have, we have a lot of anti-Semitism, but we are doing well in terms of making sure that that anti-Semitism isn't turning into dying, right, in those hate crimes where we've seen very low numbers in terms of deaths, while Black people and gay people and Asians and other people are, well over 100 people a year being unalived and killed in hate crimes. And so in short, Iranians are triggered. We're unwell. We are like watching, student activists and projecting all over them like our leftist history of the Iranian Revolution and Marxism and communism. And so I think everyone's unwell. How do we get better? I think we have to go back to what Xinjiang Azadi really stands for, which is interconnected liberation, interconnected freedom, interconnected democracy, a movement that's run through the lens of matriarchy, not patriarchy, a movement that is inclusive of diverse ethnicities, races, sexualities, gender expressions, racial groups. Women Life Freedom to me is one of the most beautiful movements I've ever seen. And it does really suck to see it weaponized both on the extreme left and right. And I think it's right of you to push these questions forward. I think we do need to think about it because I don't want to see women life freedom tied to a political military agenda. I would like to see women life freedom stay in the hands of what the Kurdish people intended it to be about, which is collective liberation. Guys, thanks for your questions. Thanks for coming on this learning safari. Thanks for supporting Reset the Algorithm. Please tell your friends. Please share. Please continue to send us your Anon questions, thoughts, and comments. Please go back and re-listen to some of the episodes. We're going to be doing a lot more going forward, and we're really proud of the work we've been able to do to date. And I don't know, have a good weekend. It's Tuesday, so just keep it moving. Thanks for joining.